Welcome to Hardtalk on the BBC World Service with me, Stephen Sackur. My guest today has been described as one of the four horsemen, not of the apocalypse, but of the new atheism. Along with the likes of Richard Dawkins and Christopher Hitchens, American philosopher Daniel Dennett has written powerfully and extensively against religion. In Dennett's case, by deploying evolutionary theory to argue that religion has outlived its usefulness and serves as nothing more than a block on human thought and understanding of the universe. In an effort to combat the continued religiosity of his native United States, Dennett's been an enthusiastic advocate of the Bright Movement, an atheist project which, according to its critics, betrays its arrogance with an implicit suggestion that religious believers might be categorized as dim. With its reliance on empirical science, Dennett's worldview is based on the proposition there is no grand design, no higher purpose beyond life itself. It satisfies him, but do humans as a species want to live in a world where atheism rules and religion is dead? Well, Daniel Dennett joins me now. Welcome to Hardtalk.
Glad to be here, Stephen.
Now, you are an atheist.
Yes, I am.
Is it fair to say that you believe the world would be a much better place if we were all atheists?
If we were all atheists, yes, but that might leave room for successor institutions which were clearly recognizable as the descendants of religions, churches.
Okay.
Secular institutions.
No God, no belief in God.
No, just all the ceremony and pomp and art and music and good works and community, but no creed.
Right, so no creed, no supernatural deity, and
No.
If I want to be just clear about this, then in your view, religions as we currently see them in our world are harmful, yes?
Overall, I think they do more harm than good. They do some good, and that I'd be happy to preserve. I think there are already some denominations, some churches, that are basically forces for good.
But overall, a force for harm. They're a net negative, in your view.
Around the world, yes.
All right, because you see, I wanted to start there because I want to get to grips with your alliance of philosophy and evolutionary theory.
Yeah.
It seems to me you posit the idea that religions are evolving, and that in essence they're evolving in a way which is going to leave them extinct. They are no longer necessary or useful for human beings. Am I right?
Well, first of all, even if they're no longer necessary or useful, they might not go extinct. The common cold is not necessary or useful. It's not going extinct, is it?
So I mean, Richard Dawkins talks of religion in a way to think of it almost like a virus.
That's why I used that example, yes. There are lots of symbionts, lots of parasites and viruses and bacteria that thrive on us and other species, and some of them are very useful to us. We couldn't live without them. The flora in our guts, for instance, couldn't digest our food without it. Some are just along for the ride, they don't hurt, and a few of them, a small minority, are really harmful. They're bad for us. But
and in that sense, in the intellectual sense, in the ideas sense, religion is bad for us, and therefore we need a cure. Is that what you're saying?
A cure? Yes, indeed. I think a lot of people are really afflicted by their religion, and I would love to see them cured.
But again, to just apply the evolutionary test, obviously, if one goes back to the origins of us, of our species, you know, there was no religion, and we developed religion over time.
Yeah.
Assuming that we developed it because it was useful to us.
No, I'm not going to make that assumption.
Why would it exist unless it were useful?
For the same reason that tobacco exists and alcohol exists and recreational drugs exist. They're useful in a sense. They're pleasant. They're great for getting high on, but it doesn't mean that they make us biologically fitter or even fitter in the everyday sense.
Every example you've just chosen is a material substance. I mean, religion is a set of ideas. It's not something you can smoke or drink. It is, in the end, it's something in our heads.
It's a drug that you ingest by the eyes and ears.
That's the way you see it. You see, I'm just,
No,
I wonder, because people around the world will be watching this, and as we develop your ideas, I think they'll be wondering how much they can connect with what you say. And I am imagining already a lot of people watching this will feel that your view of what religion is a very, very long way from theirs.
Well, when I first wrote about this, I wanted to imagine how they felt. And so I imagined that I learned from the scientists at MIT and Caltech that turned out music was bad for you. How would I react if a scientific chorus rose up and said, music, small doses, okay, but for heaven's sake, don't devote your life to music, only a few hours a day, max, otherwise you'll rot your brain. Well, first of all, I'd have a very hard time believing it. And part of me would want to say, well, over my dead body, we're going to have music, and that's all there is to it. I don't care how much harm it does. It's that wonderful. And I know that's the way a lot of people feel about religion, and I don't blame them for feeling that way. It's been the center of their lives, and that's very important. And I don't want to destroy the meaning in their lives if that meaning is in balance, a healthy meaning.
Yeah, but you, in essence, you don't think it is. I just wonder whether you've underestimated religion in a way, because I note back about 5 years ago, you said this. You said, in about 25 years, almost all religions will have evolved, that word again, evolved into very different phenomena. And in most quarters, religion will no longer command the awe that it does today. Do you still feel that 5 years on?
Oh, yes. I think the pace is quickening.
Do you?
I
mean,
yes.
You've watched the tens and tens of millions around the world who were gripped by the election of a new Pope, Pope Francis. You've seen the way Islam...
Last gasp.
Last gasp.
The Catholic Church is in deep trouble, and they know it.
In Africa, in Latin America.
Everywhere else, they're in deep trouble.
Well, hang on a minute. Everywhere else, where they're in deep trouble in Europe.
They're actually they're in deep trouble in Latin America to some degree too, because they're losing market share fast to various very aggressive Protestant denominations in particular.
And Islam. What about Islam, which is so woven into the entire Muslim world in terms of practice, values, culture? Are you telling me that within, well, you've only got 20 years left, according to your own words, within 20 years, Islam will no longer function in the way it currently does in the Muslim world?
I anticipate that Islam will undergo profound changes in the next 20 years for a very simple reason, and it's the same reason that the Catholic Church and all churches are having trouble, because of the information explosion. The internet, cell phones, transistor radios, social media, all of these have changed the entire environment in which we live. We're now living in an informationally transparent environment, and religions evolved to live in an environment where that wasn't the case, and they're all struggling.
But Daniel Dennett, I've taken Hardtalk in the recent past on the road to Tunisia, to Egypt. I have talked to people whose political and cultural views are steeped in their religion, and they are some of the most tech-savvy people I have ever met. They are using the internet, they are blogging, they are tweeting, they are sharing and communicating
and how about
with
their
digital
daughters?
technology.
How about their daughters? Are their daughters sharing in that?
Oh, I would say so.
Well, I wonder.
And I don't see any sign that they're losing their religion.
I think that the effect of the spread of information about everything, including about Islam and about every other religion, it's going to oblige religious leaders everywhere to change the way they raise their young.
What about the United States? I mean, that's where you're from, it's where you live. It's the most advanced society on earth. It is still a profoundly religious society.
Yes, but becoming less so every day. The trends,
how can you
the
tell
trends are
me
very
that
strong.
when you know, I look at the latest polling evidence, something like 27 million Americans, according to Pew Research, describe themselves as either atheistic or agnostic. Well, in a country of more than 300 million people, that tells you and it tells me that the vast majority of Americans believe in God.
But the numbers are growing. The numbers of atheists and agnostics are growing faster than Mormonism, faster than any other religion in the United States.
But why is it, according to your own view, that, frankly, that God continues to be so strong in a society like the United States?
Oh, I think there's many reasons, but I don't think I'm the authority on what they all are. I'm amused by the theory put forward by Stark and his colleagues that it's the free market system. If we had a state religion like the Church of England in England, then religion wouldn't thrive, because it's the competition for the market that keeps American religions so feisty and strong. I think there's probably an element of truth to that.
Well, I asked you earlier whether you maybe underestimated the strength of religion. You have been a loud and strong supporter of the so-called Bright movement, a message to Americans that they should come out, they should be loud and proud about being atheist. The problem is the Bright movement has been scoffed at even by some of your fellow atheists, people who say that even the notion of calling it the Bright movement with this sort of implicit suggestion that those who believe in religion are somehow dim is, to use Christopher Hitchens' word, just thoroughly conceited.
Well, first of all, if you're going to find a name, find one that provokes. If you have a completely diplomatic and gentle name, then nobody will remember.
Even if it sounds arrogant and conceited and dismissive of people who do not share your views?
Well, first of all, I didn't coin the term, but I did get on the bandwagon for it. I thought this is a good try. And the model, remember, was the wonderful political job that was done by the word gay when that was introduced. And a lot of gays hated it. A lot of homosexuals hated the word gay. So a lot of them still do. But look at the profound positive effect that word gay has had in the English-speaking world. And I think the same thing might have happened, might still happen for Bright. It hasn't been that long. It took gay several decades to catch on.
Maybe part of the reason why the Bright movement hasn't caught on is because there are people who are turned off by some of the leading atheists around the world, and I would put you in that group along with the people we've mentioned, Richard Dawkins and the late Chris Hitchens. They find the language that you sometimes employ as so aggressive, so sort of unilateral and absolute that they can't relate to it. I'm thinking of Dawkins, for example, referring to faith heads, a very contemptuous phrase for religious people, or you talking about the preposterous illusion that is religion, a gold-plated reason for people simply to stop thinking, you say.
Well, if I were talking about the petrochemical industry or big pharma or the banks, and I use that kind of language, would that be out of order?
Well, if you were talking about people with clear malign intent, it might not be out of order.
Well, some of them don't have clear malign intent, but they're still doing a lot of harm. In big pharma, in banks, in petrochemicals and so forth. I mean, I give religion as much respect as I give any other big, powerful institution in the world, and no more. I don't think it deserves any more, and very often it deserves a lot less.
Another part of the philosophy you have, I want to tease out, and that's, do you see this as a sort of binary world where you are either committed to science, to empiricism, to rationality, or you are committed to faith and religion and a belief in God? It seems to me you're saying you can't be in both camps. You have to be in one camp or the other.
Well, we know that's not true because we know there are people that somehow manage to compartmentalize their lives, their minds in such a way that they can't keep a foot in both camps. And a lot of them do it by having a way of thinking about what they're doing when they're going to church as a sort of ceremony that they love to engage in, and it's sort of dress up in ceremony, and it's thrilling. It moves them, it shivers their timbers, and they love to do it.
To be honest, that sounds terribly condescending of people like, for example, Lord Winston, one of the leading experts on human fertilization in the world, who is a practicing Jew, and who says that the language you've employed, along with Dawkins and others, is dangerous and divisive because it cuts out any chance of a dialogue between those who actually have some faith and those who are in science. He says there should be very active and fluid dialogue between the two.
Well, right now, Linda Lascola and I are completing phase 2 of our study of closeted, non-believing clergy. several dozen of them who volunteered very bravely to submit to interviews with Linda. And that's what they say. What they say is that for a lot of parishioners, that's how we did this, is that when I first started looking at religion, I spoke in confidence to people who were known in the community as being deeply religious. I wanted to know what they believed. And again, to my amazement, I discovered they said, oh, no, it's belief. No, that's nothing to do with it. No, forget about that.
Well, so your contention is that a lot of people, even people active in the religious hierarchy, don't really believe in God.
Absolutely. It's clear.
Now, let me just twist this a little bit. I'm interested in this way in which you feel that some of the finest scientific minds who actually profess to believe in religion as well, I guess you would say just misguided or hypocritical because they don't really believe in God.
I think it's possible for them to believe in God. I think if they massage their minds just right, they can compartmentalize their religious beliefs and their scientific beliefs.
What do you make of Stephen Gould, the leading paleontologist? What do you make of his notion that this is a false dichotomy you're creating, that there is, he says, a realm for science, and that, he says, is, questions like what's the universe made of and how does it work? But he says clearly there is room and there is a realm for religion too, which is concerned with questions of ultimate meaning, of purpose.
Well, that idea of his of non-overlapping magisteria, it was a nice try, but nobody bought it. The religious people didn't like it because he didn't give them any factual authority at all. Basically, he said, forget all your creeds about the origins of the world, forget all your myths. All you have to do, all you're authoritative about is ethics, basically, and the meaning of life, which didn't please those of us who are, for instance, philosophers, secular philosophers. I always thought Steve Gould is remarkably blinkered when he says that. Here he is at Harvard University, where Amartya Sen and John Rawls and Robert Nozick, three of the most influential people in ethics in the 20th century, are his colleagues, and it's as if they didn't exist. He's handing their whole field over to religion. That's preposterous.
Yeah, but the late Stephen Gould isn't the only leading scientific and philosophical voice who listens to what you say and feels in different ways that you go over the top. I mean, on a different line of argument, but similarly, I want to put it to you because I want to see how you respond. The British philosopher John Gray, he says, zealous atheism renews, actually, some of the worst features of Christianity and Islam, because he says, it's a project of universal conversion, of absolute certainty, and intolerance of alternative views.
That's a caricature of what we do.
Well, let's go through it. You do want to convert people. You want to persuade, by going out into the world with a very loud voice, you want to persuade people to give up their religion and to adopt your atheism.
I want them to think it through for themselves, and if they want to stay with their religion, I certainly don't want to.
Yeah, but you think
I don't want to hound them.
There's a right answer. I mean, we've discussed how you feel that religion has done a lot of damage to the world.
Well, I think anybody who doesn't believe that is simply ignorant. Simply ignorant.
Well, the question is whether you vest the damage in religion or in extremism, in fundamentalism, which can apply to religion, can apply to secular thinking too. It can apply to Mao, it can apply to Stalin. They weren't religious. I mean, it's not necessarily an argument about religion.
But the idea that religion has no damage on their doorstep is, I think, preposterous. Of course it does. Everybody knows it. And we can talk about the good that's done. And it's very important. In the civil rights movement, the churches were in the vanguard of making that movement work in the United States. At the same time, the church just down the road were in the rear guard of trying to keep segregation going. Now, if we praise the church for the work they did in the civil rights movement, what are we going to say about the churches that fought it bitterly and long and for much longer time?
The other point that Gray mentioned wasn't just about your desire to convert, but the absolute certainty he was getting to. The absolute certainty and the intolerance of an alternative view. Would you say you are absolutely certain, when it comes to this biggest question of all, the meaning and the purpose of life, are you certain what the answer is?
No, I'm not. And in fact, I find that question really outrageous, or that point outrageous, because as I look around the world, I see scientists and rationalists like me. We're always going around asking ourselves, what if I'm wrong? What if I'm wrong? You don't see much asking that question among the religious. They don't seem to be very interested in asking themselves, what if we're wrong?
But forgive me, maybe I, you know, being a layman in these matters, have misunderstood. I thought you were pretty certain of what the answer to the meaning of life was, and that was, in essence, life itself. You are adamant that there is no higher purpose, no grand design, that in the end, the material world is what it is, and life is the answer to the meaning of life. Have I got that wrong?
That's pretty close to it, but I don't make that either the foundation or the most important thing I have to say. If people want to know where I come out on the meaning of life, I say the world is sacred. It's wonderful. We're so grateful to be here. There's so much good to be done. I'm so grateful for all the good that has been done by others that I have been the beneficiary of. I'd like to do a lot of good back. That's meaning. That's plenty of meaning.
Yeah, but I come back to this absolute certainty. You denied it and got passionate about it, but you have an absolute certainty. There is nothing else. You dismiss it as magic, fairies, you know, supernatural myth, but you're certain of that. Whereas there are many other people, you know, writers, I'm thinking of Martin Amis, who said that his great friend Chris Hitchens, he couldn't agree with him because he didn't share Chris Hitchens' absolute certainty that there was nothing else.
Well, maybe I'm not as absolutely certain as Chris Hitchens was, but...
Really?
Absolute certainty is not a term that I'm fond of. You know, we philosophers are famous for being skeptical about just about everything, and we're very self-critical compared with most people.
Where does science end? Are there things that matter to human beings that science cannot and will not ever be able to empirically prove?
Sure.
What are they?
The meaning of life, ethics, morality. There are lots of things that it's not science's job to work out, but that doesn't mean there aren't rational ways of getting at it.
And when you answer the meaning of life to me, doesn't that indicate there will always be something like religion on our planet?
Something like religion. Yes, there will be morality and community and love and faith and beauty and joy. That's like religion. Sure. I hope it lasts forever.
Dan Dennett, thank you very much for being on Hardtalk.
Oh, thank you. Enjoyed it.
Human thought and understanding of the universe. In an effort to combat the continued religiosity of his native United States, Dennett's been an enthusiastic advocate of the Bright Movement, an atheist project which, according to its critics, betrays its arrogance with an implicit suggestion that religious believers might be categorized as dim. With its reliance on empirical science, Dennett's worldview is based on the proposition there is no grand design, no higher purpose beyond life itself. It satisfies him, but do humans as a species? Welcome to Hardtalk on the BBC World Service with me, Stephen Sackur. My guest today has been described as one of the four horsemen, not of the apocalypse, but of the new atheism. Along with the likes of Richard Dawkins and Christopher Hitchens, American philosopher Daniel Dennett has written powerfully and extensively against religion. In Dennett's case, by deploying evolutionary theory to argue that religion has outlived its usefulness and serves as nothing more than a block on no God, no belief in God.
No, just all the ceremony and pomp and art and music and good works and community, but no creed.
Right, so no creed, no supernatural deity, and
No.
If I want to be just clear about this, then in your view, religions as we currently see them in our world are harmful, yes?
Overall, I think they do more harm than good. They do some good, and that I'd be happy to preserve. I think there are already some denominations, some churches, that are basically forces for good.
But overall, a force for harm. They're a net negative, in your view.
Around the world, yes.
All right, because you see, I wanted to start there because I want to get to grips with your alliance of philosophy and evolutionary theory.
Yeah.
It seems to me you posit the idea that religions are evolving, and that in essence they're evolving in a way which is going to leave them extinct. They are no longer necessary or useful for human beings. Am I right?
Well, first of all, even if they're no longer necessary or useful, they
Want to live in a world where atheism rules and religion is dead. Well, Daniel Dennett joins me now. Welcome to Hardtalk.
Glad to be here, Stephen.
Now, you are an atheist.
Yes, I am.
Is it fair to say that you believe the world would be a much better place if we were all atheists?
If we were all atheists, yes, but that might leave room for successor institutions which were clearly recognizable as the descendants of religions, churches,
Okay.
secular institutions.